Last night, a candlelight vigil was held at the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial in Washington, D.C. to commemorate the 54th anniversary of Reverend King's assassination. Among the many people at last night's ceremony was Ukrainian ambassador to the United States, Oksana Markarova. The ambassador said she was touched by the solidarity with Ukraine as we fight for the same values and freedom.
Okay, let's never forget that Dr. King's entire philosophy are driven by religion and race. His struggle was so that black citizens could gain the right to live in the country equally, because black people were oppressed by the very people whose job it is to make sure the population is safeguarded. The situation in Ukraine is nothing like that. Very sad, very unfortunate. Heart goes out to him, not the same. This whole thing has been a look behind the curtain at exactly why people care so much about this conflict.
And that is, a lot of people on TV didn't expect a war like this to happen in, let's say, certain neighborhoods.
This is not a developing third world nation. This is Europe.
These are prosperous middle-class people. These are not people trying to get away from areas in North Africa. They look like any European family that you would live next door to.
What could be a difference here from other conflicts, that could seem very far away, in Africa or Middle East or whatever. I mean, these are Europeans that we're seeing being killed.
This isn't a place, with all due respect, like Iraq or Afghanistan. This is a relatively civilized, relatively European, I have to choose those words carefully too, city where you wouldn't expect that or hope that it's going to happen.
Wow. That was you choosing your words carefully?
Joining us now, civil rights leaders Martin Luther King III and Andrea King. Andrea, tell us about the event and also the symbolism of having the Ukrainian ambassador attending.
It was very important to really take a moment to reflect on where we are as a world and nation, and to really remember that Martin Luther King Jr. talked about the eradication of the triple evils of poverty, of racism, and war, and that he stood for peace, justice, and equity. And so we felt it was very important to have a moment to reflect on that and to stand with the Ukrainian people, with the Ukrainian ambassador, and call for peace.
What do you mean call for peace? You don't hold office and we're not at war. This is just a performative gesture to align black people with the Democratic establishment agenda. Nothing you just said has anything to do with black people or Martin Luther King's ideology. When Dr. King was calling for peace in Vietnam, it's because America was the aggressor. If this was really about poverty, racism, and war, you'd be calling for peace in Yemen, where Saudi Arabia has bombed 20,000 civilians with logistical and intelligence support from the United States.
And when we look at what's happening domestically with violence increasing, when we look at what's happening really all over the world and the many wars that exist, but certainly Ukraine being the most important because it could propel us into a World War III that no one wants to see. But the fact of the matter is, we also know that none of us will ever give up. None of us will give in. We can't give out. We have always endured as a nation and as a world community. And at some point, humankind, Dad would say, must learn nonviolence, or we might face non-existence. I want to believe that we are a much better humanity than we are seeing right now. We're seeing the inhumanity which is happening in the Ukraine.
Boy, what the fuck is you talking about? Give up or give in regards of what? We're not at war. And why is this even on the news? The news should be reporting with the intent of creating a more well-informed public. But clearly, the point of this broadcast was to align black people's political ideologies with supporting Ukraine. And if you do, that's fine. Go ahead and do that. Ukrainian people don't deserve any of what's going on right now. But don't try to trick me into thinking that we're supposed to be doing it or that this has anything to do with Martin Luther King Jr.